Yeah. But it is, you can tell, when I compare myself to some of the young ones. Sorry about that. Alex, I don't get an agenda, they don't put one over here. If I do get one, they always put one.
I've had the same thing. So,
How did I miss
what did you miss? Yeah. Sorry about your luck.
I think you should enjoy some of the Rory and Judy.
Ready?
It's gonna be.
All right, if everyone's ready, I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to this special call meeting of the Clark County Board of Education. The purpose is to discuss our tentative budget and also to hear the remainder of presentations from our architects, as well as take care of a few other things. I'd like to have everyone stand and observe a moment of silence. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item of business is adoption of the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Hicks,
Second.
second by Dr. Griffith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with District 3 vacant. And next is approval of the April 21st, 2015 regular board meeting minutes and addendum. Is the addendum to your satisfaction, Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If no other changes, the motion is in order to approve the minutes and the addendum as presented.
I make a motion. Wait, was I at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you were there.
I just had I'm not looking at them. I hadn't pulled it up in here because my thing went out earlier. And anyway, I make a motion that we approve our April 21st, 2015 regular board meeting minutes and the addendum.
Okay. Motion by Dr. Griffith,
Second.
second by Ms. Ritchie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with District 3 absent or vacant. Public comments? Anyone sign up for public comments? I don't think so. All right. I'd like to offer everybody my apologies for not being at the retirement reception. First day back from a 4-day weekend, actually, for me. Education schedules are late, so I apologize to everybody. Please convey my apologies to those honored this evening. So. All right, next up is item number 3, consider adoption of the 2015-2016 tentative budget. Gina Amos and Dr. Bob.
Well, good evening. It's
Good evening.
always a pleasure to be here, and this evening we're going to look at step 2 of your fiscal year 2016 budget development. This is May. We're going to review some of the information that's been updated since our review of the proposed budget in January. And we'll start with the revenue piece. And just to very briefly remind you that 2 very critical pieces to determining the amount of revenue that will be allocated to the district through the SEEK allocation formula. The 2 critical pieces are number of students and average daily attendance at the end of the current school year, and 2, the value of property, or the assessment, total assessment of property in Clark County subject to school taxes. In the first one, we're anticipating, first thing action you took in March and you finalized in May is settled on staffing the schools. We're expecting, when school starts, 5,358 students in the Clark County schools. And at this point, we're expecting that the end of the 2014-15 school year, that the average daily attendance will be 4,925.8. If the number is lower than that, that will have an impact, a negative impact on SEEK revenue. If the number is higher than that target, then the district will have a positive impact on their SEEK revenue. At this point, we're still holding with the estimate that we established in the January discussion at slightly over $2.96 billion. We've not had any indication from the PVA that there was anything is going to happen that would substantially escalate it or move it upward or move it downward. So, the next, on page 2, another critical piece of the mix is tax levy, and for purposes of generating estimates of what the local tax revenue would be, we're using the current year's tax rate, which is 57.4 cents per 100 of assessed value for real estate, 57.4 cents per $100 of assessed value for tangibles. Also using 53.5 cents per 100 assessed value for motor vehicles, and the continuation of your 3% utility tax rate. Okay? So if we could look at Table A, what we're going to look at here is summary of projections. And the two columns that are most important to look at are the budget column for 2014 and the projected column for 2015-16. Because what you're going to see is, at this point, the change. For example, in your general fund, we're expecting to have about 1.7 million fewer dollars to work with in 15-16 than you currently have in 2014-15. The special revenue fund at this stage is slightly over 3.8, but we're still almost probably on a daily basis, Gina is receiving verification of grants. So that number is like a moving target. It's going to go upward. We're pretty certain of that. When we look at the working budget, we'll have those numbers together. But right now, you're getting almost on a daily basis verification of grants and what they are, what the value of those grants are. Your capital outlay fund is going to dip by $305,000 plus dollars. Your building fund is going to drop by $487,000. Food service fund at this point, we still can. Estimating that it's going to be about the same as the current year. So when you look at the total line, at this juncture, we're expecting the district to have approximately $6.3 million less to work with in fiscal year 2015 than you currently have in fiscal year 2014-15 that you're ending. Questions?
Reasons for the significant drop.
And in the general fund, the primary reason for that is that in 14-15 you had a significant reimbursement for some advance payments you had made for architectural services. Remember when you were starting some of your projects, when you start a project until you have the bond sale, the general fund has to pay the cost of your architects, whatever they charge you at that point. Once you make that sale, then you can recoup it, and you did that in 14-15, excuse me. And so that's not going to happen. That's kind of like a one-time event.
Okay.
So at this point, we're not expecting any such event in 2015-16. Is that correct?
Only if we talk about the athletic complex and the preschool, which we've already started spending in the planning stages for those things, and general fund is taking care of that right now. Bond sales.
So if those bond sales occurred during the next fiscal year, you would have the opportunity to recoup that, and that would show up in your 2015-16 annual financial report.
So for purposes of this graph, the actual 2013-14 number may be a more valid comparison to the current projected 2015-2016.
You can look, nothing wrong with looking at that, but yes. But in 14-15, it was part of the mix. So there you are.
In 13-14, it was too.
Right. Okay.
Your special revenue, we pretty much explained we're expecting that number to increase because we don't add it to the mix until you get verification that you've received, like for example, your Title I grant and the value of that Title I grant. In your capital outlay fund,
We didn't have we had a beginning balance in those years. Where we bought buses and bought instruments and different things, we've spent it down to zero. So we'll have no carryover this year.
Okay.
That's why they
so that answers those two questions. Okay. Any additional questions with table?
And building fund, just to round it out.
Same thing.
Same issue.
Capital fund.
Remember, you have two capital funds, your building fund and your capital outlay fund, and you've chosen to use any dollars not needed for debt service for other capital needs that the district has. Okay, page 3, table B, looks at the difference from January, which is the draft 2015-16, and the projected, which is May. Now, we're anticipating that your general fund is going to drop slightly by about $157,000. And the answer for why that is we have, from January to May, we lowered our estimate on average daily attendance.
Right.
Okay? We dropped it about 30 students, actually. And you can see in the other categories, there's very little, and so capital outlay fluctuates about the same. Actually, you can tell from that we lowered it by 33 students because your capital outlay dollars are always ADA times $100. And it also had an impact then on your building fund. So across all funds from January to May, we're at this point expecting the revenue to decrease by $217,000 from our January look to our review here in May. If you look at table C, when you look at the state general fund, revenue fund, there you can see it. But we're not projecting at this point. We still think you're going to end or begin July 1, 2015 with a balance of $9 million. We don't see nothing's occurred that we want to change the projected local general fund revenue, a slight decrease in the state, no change in federal. So the bottom line is general fund in May, we're projecting to be about $157,000 less than what we projected it to be in January. On page 4, let's kind of change gears and discuss expenses. In table D, we're looking at your debt service. And your debt service for 15-16 is scheduled to be slightly over $3 million. Now, your recurring revenue from your two capital funds is going to be slightly over $4.19 million. So you have an uncommitted remaining balance of $1.095 million. It's uncommitted. It will be in those excuse me, building fund and capital outlay funds after all your debt service is accounted for. That's a good position to be in. On page 5, I'd point out that your section 6 allocations to your schools is above the $100 minimum that was set by the 2014 General Assembly. Actually, I think it's $136 and change, I think. Next item is salary schedule improvements. If we look at table E, you can see you have a mandate. You've increased both your certified and classified salary schedules by 2%. And you can see that compared to the current year budget, projecting out what that's going to cost. And in both cases, you're using the same, try to make this clear as we can, it's the same staff. In other words, we took the same staff that's in place right now, bumped those folks' salary schedule by 2%, did the math, and you can see that it's projected to cost you slightly over $707,000 to do that.
Okay, so when you say the current staff, is that like including the people who are retiring in the next week?
Yes, ma'am.
So when they leave and they're replaced by somebody else,
That
those
number will
numbers will
fluctuate.
change. Okay.
When we
right.
look at the working budget, we'll see some fluctuations. We're kind of entering the period of where change happens.
Right. And then, we were doing the 2% increase, but it says percent change is 1.7%. Is that because you're doing the percent change of what we predicted the budget would be earlier this year and what it's? I mean, wait.
Well,
I don't understand why it's 1.7 when we had to do a 2% raise.
Because one change that has happened that would cause it drop that number slightly is in the May look, if you'll recall, that the SPDM allocation, for example, of certified staff requires 3 fewer positions going into 2015-16 than what the 2013-14 would show. So that would have, 3 positions. If you use just a round average number of say $45,000, that's about close to $150,000 that we took out from January to May.
Okay.
So that would drop.
So if those 3 were in there, it would be the 2%. Okay.
Okay. Won't belabor the point because it always kind of balances itself out, but you're kind of right there still at 84% of your projected budget dedicated to personnel, but you can see that, and particularly when we do the annual financial report, it has a tendency over the course of the year to drop. And part of that is just simply because you do have the opportunity for change as the year moves on. Okay? Table F gives you a look at general expenses from the current 2014-15 budget to the projected 2015-16 budget, and you can see the changes in these broad categories, these non-broad categories. Overall, if you drop down to the line, it says general fund estimated expense. At this point, you can see that your budget actually is showing on the expenditure side a decrease in expenditures of slightly over $580,000 from the current budget year. In Table
So
G,
what are the major reasons for that?
one of the major reasons is if you look at 700 property,
Yes.
and you
That's
notice
what
you
I'm
had
saying.
a budget of 1.3 and we're in $1 million, and in 14-15 we're only budgeting a little over $109,000. So that's a big drop.
Purchase of buses and things like that that we were not projecting to do next year that bring this year's budget.
The rest, I mean, that's the biggest dramatic event. Your dramatic events in terms of increases all hinge around your personnel costs. Those are your 2 big items there, and you had one significant decrease. But at least, from my perspective, it's in line with, you're not looking at a significant jump in your expected expenses. So that, what that would tell you is that you're beginning to begun to get a real good handle on your non-personnel costs in terms of better accuracy with your projections. That's why they fluctuate so little. Table G on page 7 gives you a look of the draft from January and the projected from May, and you can see some slight changes. And from January to May, then the general fund estimated expenses actually increased by $223,000. But again, nothing overly significant. It's just, for example, I know that you got notification recently that you can expect your utility energy costs to go up fairly significantly. You've got a notice that your workers' comp
Yes.
went up by about $80,000. So I mean, there's some things that are. This is where it begins to show up. Some things over which you have very, very little control. I mean, energy costs. You can always just keep redoubling your efforts on being conserving and doing everything you can, but your reward sometimes is just the rates still go up. The rate goes up, but anything you can do that keeps pushing back, then at least you got a chance.
Along the lines of the energy part, what is the status of our energy committees in our schools? We haven't had an update on that for some time. Are they working to implement strategies for saving
Yes.
energy?
Yes, but the biggest concentration right now has been on equipment and things that where we have better controls, where they can control some things.
But do we have active energy committees in the schools?
Probably not in all of them right now.
We have gotten out of our less energy efficient buildings into
Right.
more
Yeah.
energy efficient
Yeah.
buildings. So,
But
We've taken, yeah, but there's still, I mean, with the committees, there's some things that we probably can still do. We've taken a lot of the controls out of the hands of the people in the buildings, and we've taken controls out of those things, like turning lights out if they plenty leave, shutting things off at night. With the controls that we're doing in the buildings, we've taken a lot of the human part out of it, gone to the technology side where we can control that, not turning the air on at certain times and those kind of things. But the energy committees, as we get these controls going, we need to go back and start pushing those again and getting the kids involved in the schools and curriculum things. And there's still some fruit to be picked there probably, but it's not as substantial as it was probably 5 years ago. Which, this has kind of been a year to concentrate on the safety committees and getting those things going in the schools, so we'll need to pick up that part of it again.
PSI has recently done energy assessments
Yeah.
on 3 of your schools as well that they'll be bringing to the board soon. It was on Justice, Cartwright, and Shear. Of course, we're doing the energy contract with Campbell, and we just, as of today, are applying for Energy Star status with GRC.
We're actually going to be applying for Energy Star in 4 buildings. We've got GRC going now, and we're working on 3 other buildings. We'll be applying for Energy Star rankings on 4 buildings total.
Stroke numbers are really impressive.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Because we
Is
were
it more
losing.
comfortable?
The next, well, I've not had any complaints. I don't know if anybody's complaining or not. They've not.
He's smiling. Is that a good smile or a bad smile?
Are we talking about the temperature?
Just the
Yes.
comfort level in the
Yeah,
building.
it was a little finicky in the beginning, but things got worked out. And, to try to keep 66 people happy and set on one set of temperature sometimes has its challenges.
And educating teachers not to put space heaters next to thermostats.
Yeah,
That would be-
yeah.
And I think there was a little bit of user error when they were trying to figure it out and learning how when it resets and stuff and when you can touch the dial and when you can't. So,
Well, the kids don't have to wear their coats in the gym, right?
So,
Okay.
they don't have to do that.
Okay.
your energy efficiency is really good.
And Strode probably this time next year we'll be applying for Energy Star on it too. We have to have a year's worth of utilities after the changes before you apply.
Concerning your projected budget reserve, you're required to have a minimum of 2% at the tentative budget stage, and that is $1.121 million. This budget actually includes an unrestricted general fund reserve or contingency of $8.737 million, which equates to 15.6% of the total budget.
Now, I know we asked you this last year, but I kept running all the different numbers, and I can't get numbers to get to that 15.6. So that 8.737701 goes into what?
Goes into the total of your